out of curiosity, I mean, we're going to be talking about investing and investing mindfully and in companies that are doing good for the planet and other things. Do you have a meditation practice that you currently do or have tried?
I have to confess, I have a hard time meditating. I'm one of these people that are constantly thinking ahead. I'm a visionary, so I'm always thinking, and I have, believe me, spent a long time in my life trying to learn how to practice that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Have you, just out of curiosity, have you sat down and tried it and it became more of like a, almost like, um, a game of thoughts almost, right? Like your mind was just thinking different thoughts.
That happens to me more. And when you're with someone who's leading a meditation, they tell you to come back to connectedness and
Yeah.
such. But I do practice yoga, so I do get that. And I also am a sailor. So I
Ooh.
can tell you, yeah, and I love it. And so a form of meditation for me, believe it or not, is just looking at the water as we're sailing. So I'm looking
Ooh.
at actually the ebb and flow of the water at the bow of the boat or at one, and I just, if I'm not obviously at the helm, just staring at that water and staring at that water to me is one of the most exquisite meditations ever. So
Yeah, it seems very soothing that it would be like as the front of the sailboat is like cutting through the water, that area you're talking about.
yeah, well, usually I'm sort of midship, if you will. So where
Okay.
you wish where a mast would be. So it's kind of the side with the port or starboard side, the
Uh,
high side of the boat when you're on a sailboat. Yeah, so it's actually seeing a side view of the water as opposed to at the front. But it's water in motion. So the water
mm,
is in its own motion. We're creating more motion with it, and it's swirling and it's beautiful and deep, and I don't know. It's one of my
yeah,
most.
I love that. Where do you sail? Where you live? Where do you live?
So I live in Connecticut, outside of New York City, and so we sail on the Long Island Sound. Um, where are you from?
I'm in Rochester, New York. So,
I was born in Syracuse.
oh, okay, yeah, yep. I'm
So
a big
all Wegmans people.
yeah. Is there a Wegmans in Connecticut yet? Out there?
One just came to close to us for the
Oh,
first time.
cool, cool. Yeah, that's I'm born and raised here, and this is where I'll be for a while. I have a family and stuff now. We're pretty well established. But what you do is really interesting. I wanted to give a brief with Unify Impact
Hmm.
in ESG. Uh, give a brief just explanation of what that is, and then I want to know what brought you into that field, and then I'm
Sure.
going to ask some specific questions about that.
Okay. Most people really don't know what ESG is. And
Right.
we've had user testers on our site even say, environmental, superior, they not a clue. And understandably, but they are an acronym for environmental issues, social issues, and governance issues. So if you can imagine, all three of those can impact companies. Governance is hiring practices and policy measures and things like that. And social is, diversity in the workplace, and um, obviously environmental is, what is the footprint that they're leaving on the world. So ESG became very popular over the last few years. It used to be that it was used for what they'd call socially responsible investing, which would be where you would limit companies that you just knew were bad. Like, I'm never going to invest in guns, or I'm not going to invest in liquor. And it's really grown since then to be a point where we're learning so much about companies through real data that's coming out that we can actually see how they're really performing in areas of responsibility.
Yeah, my mind says as an investor before we got in touch, like truthfully, like I'm not even going to like try to sugarcoat it. My mind says, okay, what companies are going to give me the best opportunity to put money into so that it will grow? And that's all I thought about,
Sure.
because I'm not educated that this was even something to think about, honest, like truthfully. So it's really, here's what's really interesting and why I love this, that you're here and for people to listen, because I'm conscious about my, little things like the straws, right? I don't use plastic straws anymore.
Right.
I'm conscious about eating less meat because I just know what the meat industry does. I'm not a vegetarian. I just less of it, right? I choose other options at times. And different things like that. Um, I don't no plastic water bottles in my house. It's just refilling water as much as often as I can. Where before I would just have water bottles everywhere. So these are things I'm being conscious of for the environment. I never thought about it in the investment side of things.
It's amazing. There was a young researcher that we were using, and she's really into LGBTQ issues and veganism and all kinds of things. But she said, I don't have a clue what I'm investing in. I mean, I don't know. And that's really interesting because, I believe that, so Unify is geared toward millennials and rising Gen Z natives,
Okay.
Because we believe that the millennials are definitely the up and coming wealth holders. And there's a lot of them. So they're going to be the wealthiest generation we've ever had in time. They're also the most socially aware, just like you're saying. You're socially aware. You're not going to use straws. You know what happens in the oceans. You're not going to use plastics. You read about those things, but you don't know what, for instance, Procter and Gamble is doing about it, or what a specific, what's Tesla doing about it.
Right.
Think about it,
Right.
and so the investing world has really become aware that people are very concerned about social issues. And so what's been happening is that there's been a lot of analysts and a lot of big companies coming up with what they call thematic funds. So I'm sure you've seen things like a cannabis fund, or a clean water, or a fund that deals with decarbonization.
And just to stop you, so what you're talking about for people listening is it'd be a conglomerate or a group of 6, 7, 8 companies in this fund, and they all are related to that you're investing.
They're all related to that.
Yeah.
But if you unpack those funds and take it company by company and look at other factors, they might have a great carbon footprint score, but they might not be doing as well in a social score. They may not be doing as well in their manufacturing or supply chain or whatever, and the fact of the matter is, we've found a way, because the data exists, and this is really exciting. The data gives us power now. It's out there. We can read about it. We can ascertain how a company is performing in so many different areas that are of interest to us. Yeah. So the way the app is working is we have 9 impact values, such as pollution control, gender diversity, things like that. And you can choose from those values of things that I'm kind of interested in pollution control. I want to know what companies, how are they performing in that? Or I have 4 things I'm interested in. And then you can actually search company by company and actually see how their scores are and how they're performing. And then you can read news about, okay, well, like, give you a perfect example, Tesla. I drive a Tesla, and Tesla's, I feel so great that I just plug it in and I never have to use fossil fuel. But what's going to happen when the battery has to be buried? These are issues. There's a lot of issues. There's no such thing as a green company or a socially equitable company. All companies have good and bad practices. And the more we know about these companies, the more we can be aware of the ones that are going to make us more powerful.
And as far as that's great. And I love that. And your app, you've done all that research for us as consumers, right?
Well, they're called data providers, and there's a lot of them out there. And it's growing. So there's, big industry and corporate investors and things like that use data on companies. And that's how they can analyze them for funds or things like that. But this is the first time that this kind of data is available to you and me. And it was really exciting to talk to these different data companies. And they said, wow, we never thought about retail, meaning individuals like us versus institutional. And that got very exciting for them and for us. So we're working with two different providers. One is for ESG, and we take their sort of AI, and then we use an algorithm, and we can create scoring for companies on our impact values. And then we have financial data, because you also want to see that maybe choosing companies that you feel are aligned with your values are actually going to do well in the market in the long term.
Right.
This is proven out all the time. But so we're blending both data points in the app. You can see your financial, the market, how it's doing in the market, and also its sustainable footprint.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Based on, so this is, so based on your values. So you said that like you could choose, okay, I'm interested. So these are the three things that I most care about, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And then once you punch that in, shows companies that follow these
that have higher scores. So
have higher scores,
scoring higher in those areas, and
now,
then you read the news about it.
And then you read the news, and so you're researching, so you're feeling good about what you're investing in. And what about return wise? The companies, you know, because I think, okay, if I have an extra $5,000, I'm going to go throw it. If I'm going to throw it individually in something, I'm going to go put it in Apple, right? Or I'm going to put it in Tesla, without thinking about what they're
without
doing.
thinking,
Right.
Yeah.
So,
sorry.
No, so what are so companies? What I'm trying to get at, I guess, is like what you know, are you creating funds? I know you said that earlier. Is there like or just individual stocks that you recommend?
Absolutely. Individual stocks. In fact, what we're doing instead of creating a fund at this point is that we want to allow you to maybe take your portfolio or your funds and unpack them and unpack them, like take them out of the suitcase and say, okay, I see all these companies, but I want to see how they're really performing in all the areas that I'm concerned about, not just in what the fund says.
Right. And these companies are returning, I mean, profits and like, you know, are these companies we've heard of? Or these, you know,
oh yeah, this is the stock market. So
Fortune 500 companies,
Fortune 500, what they call the Russell 2000. Okay. We have 20,000 companies, but we're not going to have them all available. So but you'll get to a point where you'll see younger companies that are publicly traded. They're called small cap companies. They're smaller. They may be more nimble. They might be like wind power companies. But it may be that a larger company like Con Edison or something that may have a negative reputation due to how they've utilized fracking or something. They may actually have more money in place to make changes quicker. So the more we learn, you begin, never think, I'm worried that I'm not going to make money with companies, because this is all companies. It's just that you're getting more knowledge about these companies. So let
me ask you, Mary Ann. So you went through this process, right? The unpacking process. When did you do that with your own portfolio? Was it?
Okay, so I'll give you a little background.
Yeah.
What happened to me was I was married for a very long time and was no longer married, and I had to start managing my own money at an older age. So I went to a financial person, wealth manager. And I was just like you. I'm like, well, I really want stuff that I know is good for the environment or whatever. And they just looked at me and said, no, you don't, Mrs. Hawley. What you need is just to be sure that your future is safe. So we're going to put you in these stocks. And I said, I don't know. So I took courses. I went back to Columbia and took some courses in sustainability and ESG and the history of sort of socially responsible investing. Oh. I went to conferences, and it was at a conference that was put on in London it was called Disrupt 19. And it was all about how the financial world is, how the markets are just going to be disrupted, whether it's geopolitical, whatever. And there was a company called Refinitiv, which is I don't want to get too technical with you, but Reuters was a very famous company for news. You must see if you saw like a magazine article or a newspaper article, you might see Reuters or Associated Press or something like that.
Sure.
And Refinitiv was sort of a breakout with Reuters where they started collecting really strong raw data from companies based on self-reported data from companies, based on the news and social media. And they were able to take a company, say, I'll just throw out one. There's a bank, Citibank, and you could look under environmental and they could say not enough light in the ladies' room. I mean, they went that granular, like, okay, so there's not enough lights, or, you know, how much they're cooling the building, all the way over to really serious issues like using children on assembly lines in India. So it got me thinking, my goodness, this is powerful stuff, being able to actually see the inside of a company, not just its financial performance, but they got to start to become accountable for their social performance or their governance performance or their environmental performance. They have to be responsible, because if they're not, they're going to lose out. And then this all exploded all the way across the markets now with issues on the company materiality. How a company is performing can affect its risk in the market.
You know,
I hope I can simplify that, but
no,
I hope.
this sounds, Marianne, I love this, because it's allowing the people, the investors, to hold the companies responsible in a whole different way.
Absolutely. It's so exciting.
It really, it makes me think like, okay, I need to drop whatever I'm doing and go like talk about this more, because I really, because it's going, I can see it's an uphill battle, right? I totally can understand. Now, I don't know if I'm explaining uphill right, but it's going to take a lot of voices to spread this knowledge, because for so many years we're just conditioned of invest in the companies like Amazon that are going to make money, that will do it, and that's all we've really cared about. But what is one thing that has shocked you when you did this research? One or two things that you were just like, whoa, I never knew this. I'm so glad I do now. Can you share that?
Oh man, there was a really good example, and I don't even want to name the companies, but there's an example where there's two big box stores. So you can imagine like a Kmart and a Lowe's, or Home Depot and Lowe's. They both are probably doing pretty well in the markets because they're both, offering the same things. And until we learned that one was actually giving a lot of money to a political party and biasing that way. Or I don't know if you've heard the Hobby Lobby story, where they would not hire anyone in the LGBTQ community.
Yes. Yes.
So these things give me chills, because to be able to have that kind of knowledge about any company that you're trying to make money from, it's just so much more. You have that one more layer that's your values are aligning with your company, and you're still going to make money.
Right.
It's long-term investing like anything, but we're showing you the market as well. So it's a good way to have a watch list and see, well, really let's see how this company's doing.
Yeah. So that's, it's not just impacting the environment, it's impacting humans too, itself. I avoid, and this is all kudos to my wife, I avoid Home Depot as much as I can, unless it's like so inconvenient. I'll go in there if I need to. And I'd rather go to Lowe's, because I guess I don't even know exactly why. My wife told me something about the CEO doing something.
That's right.
Oh, the political views. I think it was that.
That's what I just told you. Yeah.
I think that's what it was. That's what it was. Yeah. So then it aligns, and that if that aligns with your value, that makes sense. So, what I should look at then, which I never even thought about, is, are any of my investments, does it have Home Depot in the business?
Exactly.
And if so, remove them in that category. That's because I'm just, what is that saying? What saying am I looking for here?
I'll put it this way.
Being a hypocrite?
You wouldn't be a hypocrite. You're just armed with more knowledge, so that you can have investments that are aligned with your values, rather than investments that aren't aligned. I read that your first question is, what's the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning? that's what they told me usually ask.
So that is literally what I ask every single person, but because this topic was so intriguing to me, I was like, I just want to like get right into it here with this. I've asked every single person that. So I guess we can touch on that. Yeah, what?
So I was just going to say to you, this is a mindfulness podcast.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that people your age, a lot of millennials, are anything but mindful at this point. They're anxious, they're wrought, they don't know where they're going to make, where society going. They've been through an arduous sort of election situation. We've had Black Lives Matter. We've been all impacted like nobody's business on COVID. This all has to do with so many things. It has to do with societal issues. It has to do with, to give you an example, when you think about climate, environmental, think about pollution, you think about things, COVID has a huge impact on that when people are crowded together in apartment buildings and they can't get out. And I think that what we're trying to do is by giving by giving the power to allow you to see how you can find companies that align with your values, that is very mindful. And I think that would bring power. And so this is what excites me.
Yeah, and I mean, you wouldn't do this, like you wouldn't have gone back to school, you wouldn't have gone to the conferences, created an app if it didn't like mean something to you. And I was, again, before this recording, I was like, this is such a cool topic to be mindful about, because we're mostly not. Like there's so many other things and books and stuff you read about being mindful, but we never talk about being mindful with who we invest with. And I didn't even know you could research that and know this. So that's really, really neat. What are some of the top, I guess, as somebody into this, what are some of the top companies right now that are pretty, that align with your values that you see doing well or are doing well currently?
I don't know if I can be at the liberty to answer those questions, because one thing I have to say is a disclosure is that I am not a financial advisor. So it's hard for me to answer a question like that.
Right.
But
right.
I will assure you that I could name any company in the stock market and get you information on it, okay, so that you can decide whether or not that company aligns with your values.
As you were going through your investments and your story, did you find yourself switching a lot of what you had to be more aligned?
Honest to goodness, I have found with traditional wealth managers that I've been working with that they're very resistant. They don't have any knowledge.
Yeah.
That's why they're getting it. I mean, if you look, you'll see commercials for Fidelity or for such and such. Oh, we can now do ESG.
Oh, okay.
They're just getting it. I think my dream would be to be the Robin Hood of responsible investing, but be as dynamic as a Robin Hood. We're digital, remember, we're not brick and mortar. Right. At this point, we're not even a registered investment advisor. It's something that that is in our roadmap, so that we can actually offer advice and help build portfolios. But right now we are basically just offering information, and you can create a watch list.
Yeah, I think that is
and then go back to your own investor.
Yeah, and go back to them. So create a watch list, go back to your investor, let them.
Hey, guess what? Yeah.
What's that?
No, I mean, just go back to your investor with some knowledge, teach him something.
Well, so is your goal as a company, as a human, and what you're passionate about and doing, is it more of getting into those businesses, those investment companies, and educating them, or educating the consumer, the individual like me, so that I can?
My goal is to educate the consumer, and I'd like to be the Robin Hood so I don't know if you're familiar with Ellevest. It's also a digital investment firm for women, and it's really gorgeous the way they're just geared toward issues for women. And Robinhood is just got a great interface, and we want to have that same kind of like a go-to place for sustainable investing. Wait, what was the other? You had another bit of that question. I'm
No,
sorry.
that's okay. No,
Sorry about that.
because I can see. I mean, you're in that, and I think that I think this is definitely needed. Like, I would love somewhere like that where you guys were actually like, okay, now you can invest with these or these portfolios or whatever. If someday that ever happens, I think that's extremely valuable for what do
It's
I
going to be
know?
amazing. It's going to be
Yeah,
amazing.
but
Plus, with sustainable financial planning, so
wow.
that as you look toward your future, paying off loans or your first baby or your first home or how you donate. And the other really exciting thing is that there's we are collaborating very closely with two different areas of responsible thinking, responsible investing. One is the UN, and we're a UN PRI signatory, which means Principles of Responsible Investing. We have to promise that we will only become as transparent as possible about how companies are performing in a way that will do good for the world. And so that's really exciting because the UN has proposed, they're hoping by 2025 to have every country in the world align with social development goals. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's so amazing and rich, but it's heady. It's big stuff. It's worldwide stuff. It's policies. And then there is the other side, which is from another organization called SASB, which is in sustainable accounting. And they actually have a map that looks at different behaviors or performances within the company, within sustainability. And that is really powerful because that's where you can actually determine whether or not a company is performing well in a specific area. So that's called company materiality. And they're showing now statistically that if a company isn't performing well, they're going to have risk in the market. They're going to start doing poorly in the market because people are going to be more knowledgeable than you are right now, where you're saying, yeah, I just want to make money and blah, blah. But basically, we're going to be able to be much more powerful and be able to tell companies, you better be changing your practices or we're going to divest.
Wow, I mean, you see a shift. I mean, that requires a
Yeah.
shift. It's going to completely, both in the market, both from the consumer, both from the
It's,
company.
it's happening before anything we're doing. That's the exciting bit. It's
Wow.
happening with all the big players. You know, institutionally, that's just, if you look at white papers and, you know, podcasts from Bloomberg or what have you,
Yeah.
you're going to hear this over and over again. So that's an exciting thing. It's not like we're inventing
Inventing it, right? But you're a catalyst. I mean, you're a part of the movement. So, and you and
Yeah.
obviously,
And I love that you used the movement. Thank you, because I feel like it's a movement.
I absolutely. I mean, there's no. I completely like that. Seems like the proper word for it. And the audience that you specifically know, because Taylor, you know, you're not gonna get this message across to 60-year-old plus people right now. I mean, that's, you know, they're at least in you're probably stronger going to the millennials who have a longer 60, 70 years left,
Well, no,
you
it's not
know, and
even that. It's that the millennials,
care more.
they care more. They've been through more. They're a generation that lived through September 11th, but they're the ones that are worried about college loans and, you know, and all kinds of things that are hitting them. You know, do I have a job? I'm in the middle of COVID. You know, should I have a baby now? Should I not? Whatever it might be. I feel like it's tougher for you than it was in my generation. I'm one of those 60-year-olds, but you know,
Well,
so
I didn't mean it
but
like
no,
that. It's like, you know, I think picture my parents. Like my parents are at their life where they're 60 something, and they're, you know,
yeah,
they're probably just care at least that they have enough money that they can live the rest of their life with their 401k and their retirement, right?
right.
You know, where someone younger can actually more have the ability to educate themselves and care about the type of company they invest in, I guess.
Yeah, they do, and you're also going to get the wealth dropped onto you. So
Right,
you'll
that
become the
too.
largest. You'll be. I mean, we have all the statistics
Oh,
going.
really?
Well,
Because of
we
the
didn't
baby
make them
boomer
up.
generation, or what is that? Why?
Yeah, because once the parents hand over their wealth,
What
yeah, exactly.
then the kids are all just going to blow right through it,
No, they're not.
right?
Because
The
they're not kids
millennials
anymore. They're 40 somethings. They're late 30 somethings. They're not
yeah.
children anymore. And you got those really cool Gen Z kids that are out there protesting. So, and they're coming right up after you, and they're the entrepreneurial spirit.
Love it. So
Yeah.
let me ask you, I wanted to touch back on a question or something you just said.
Yeah.
Why do you think that the millennials or that generation have it a little bit harder than you guys had it during that age with decisions?
That's a good question. Other than, I mean, if I look back on my generation, we were real, I don't know how to even explain it. You remember back in, like the time of Wall Street, that movie Wall Street in the 80s. The 80s was like a time of like, power suit, power walking. The women wore sneakers on, going to work. I was when advertising was like, yeah. And I think that, I don't know. I don't know how, I know I can answer it for my own children. I don't really want to answer it for the world, but I think maybe we had it a bit easier than
I
you
think
guys.
if I don't have an answer, but I think that when you have more options, it creates a little bit more anxiety, stress, decision fatigue, like we do today. And there's more information being blasted in our faces 24/7,
Very true.
compared to like the one path or two path options back in when you were 30.
Yeah, exactly.
There wasn't 80 different directions to go. There was one or two that you knew of at the time, and now, yeah, so that's part of it, I think. And I don't know, there's a lot to it. If you were going to say that it was quote unquote harder or different or more difficult, now I think there's a lot more of I think people compare themselves a lot more to other people because it's so
Well,
easy to open
social
Instagram.
media, of course, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah, that's much more competitive, and
competitive. Yeah,
and 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 the news when it's bad is it goes into your bloodstream. It's because it's everywhere. Every time you turn on TV or you look at Twitter, you're just in this anxious, high anxiety world. Thank you for doing mindfulness, by the way.
oh yeah,
It's
appreciate that. Yeah, it's when you can become more aware of things, it makes, I don't know, it just makes for better decisions, for doing better, being better. And I think I was reading an article there, like 80% of companies, I don't know, 50, 40, 30 years ago, had pensions, right? And I
Mhm.
think it's 18% now or 15% have pensions. So
Exactly.
there's just one example of how, like, oh, just get a job, you have a pension, you'll be fine when you get, and now it's totally different.
Yep.
And yeah, so there's a lot of reasons probably why the kids today have it different. I don't know if it's more difficult. Maybe like maybe it
No,
is.
it's just a different. It's a different. Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't researched it enough to really know the answer. I was hoping you would have it for me.
I'm sorry, and I'm embarrassed. If we could have a take two, I'll go look it up and then come back to you. I don't have all my. I was told not to give you any statistics, so
Oh, you have your team making. Is that why Fireflies is on, to make sure that we're
I
taking?
turned it off. Unfortunately, I wish I kept it on, but no,
No,
I have.
Fireflies is still on. They're still on with us. We're good. Yeah, I can understand that somebody in your position, going on podcasts, going on media, like you have to be careful with statistics, numbers, advice, specific companies, who you talk about, who you don't. I get it. I understand. So I'll just keep trying to pry more out of you if I can.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I can.
So what companies should I invest in now that are very sustainable?
No, but I can read a few things like Morningstar. Reports that the first quarter of 2020, investors poured a record $10.5 billion into sustainable funds. And that's nearly half the total amount invested in 2019. So in one quarter, but that's funds, because Morningstar is a fund. What's exciting to me is nobody talks about companies. All of the sustainability issues are not company led. They're more, as I said before, the thematic funds. And And yet we also saw that 64% of people say they practice a sustainable, responsible investing, socially responsible investing, especially millennials, who make up 68% of those doing so. So one of the reasons that we're going after millennials is because it's the largest cohort of
Involved in
people
that. When you say
involved.
sustainable funds, what fund, like, can you give me a couple examples of what they mean by that?
Well, no, there's different, you probably are in some funds if you look at your portfolio. If you're in any funds, that would be like from Vanguard, or that would say like decarbonization fund,
Oh,
or the top ESG company fund, or
ah,
yeah.
okay. I mean, if I know I was looking at it today and I just have, I guess I'm not even sure. I know that I just have some small cap, mid cap, foreign, you know what I mean?
Right.
Large, but I don't know if specifically they're labeled
Wait,
as
are you
that.
saying are they funds or are they companies? Small.
So it is a fund that is made up of
Oh, okay,
companies.
great. What's it? Okay, what's the name of the fund?
Let me take while I'm on here, I might as well just open it up.
Okay.
This is just one of my, I'm just looking at a simple one that I have. I have a couple of different funds, couple different markets, money that my money's in. Um, but like my small company stocks is IJR.
Okay.
I don't know how many different
Well, there's millions and millions. Does it say anything about it? What kind of companies it's made up of?
yeah. Yeah, it doesn't give me it just gives me the company names, like Exponent, Neogen, Fox Factory. Those are small companies.
Mm-hmm.
And then my large are your typical, it's the VOO, Microsoft, Facebook,
Yeah,
Google, Apple, Amazon.
sure.
Um,
The
and then
FANG
this
stocks.
an IJH. Oh, Etsy's in my fund. How about that? Uh, Teradyne, Catalent.
Wouldn't it be fun to be on Unify and be able to say, okay, I want to
I
look.
actually, that's what I'm thinking about as I'm looking at this. I'm like, I'm gonna go on Unify and look and see, and then pick and choose maybe some different options here. That's cool.
Yeah.
Um, now I'm upset that I don't have a fund that tells me that I'm in a sustainable energy ESG fund or something.
Well, no, that's okay, because I'd still make you unpack it and see, well, what are they doing about, human rights, or what's happening in the supply chain?
And I can learn all that on the Unify app. Great.
Yeah, well, we're an MVP, so we're constantly making changes to it. It's really early stage at the app, but yes, that is the idea, that you can go on and you should go on and just test it out.
I will for sure. I mean, I'm sure that people on here will download just to like check it out and look at it. Is it free app? Is it a free app?
It's totally free right now. It's a web-based app at this
Web
point.
based. Okay.
But what I would advise is go on Google Chrome and look at the website first and have
Okay.
a read, because it's got a lot of the story to tell, and then you can go on the app.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, so is that like is that is there anything else that you want to share as far as places people can look up for information about this or get invested or recommendations?
And recommendations, I'm not
Yeah.
welcome. We will be able to. No, I would just love for people to just check out the website. We are our MVP. It stands for minimally viable product, right? So they're basically, technically, a lot of MVPs are glorified wireframes. Are really simple, and you just have to see, can the user navigate through something. Ours, because we are so data led, there's some sophistication, and it may take a while to kind of walk through it. We're really working now to revamp the product, the tech product, to be really user friendly and very intuitive. So hang in there, because that's happening by the end of the year.
Sure. So you see companies, so you see companies being, and I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, being kind of like based on their stock value is
Mhm.
something a news story comes out about them not following a certain
Yeah, yeah.
protocol or guideline more, whereas it didn't matter as much before, but like you said that when you go on there's like
We have impact values. We have nine different
nine
impact values.
different impact values. So whether, I mean, I'm sure they won't go specifically by those 9 values. Maybe they will. I don't know. But like if there's a story impacting one of those or something they messed up on, that
Yeah.
could impact their stock amount. You see that happening in the
Yeah,
future.
that's like a crisis. Like, I mean, that would be like, the
Does that
stock. Yeah.
affect anything right now? Does it really like when those stories come out, does it really matter right now, or is it something that's coming up?
I think that depends. I think if there was some major catastrophe like an oil spill, it would totally affect it. I mean, if you look at just your market without even thinking about ESG, and you read the headlines about, for instance, the election not being finalized, that's impacting on the stock market. So the stock reacts to news.
Yeah, it's almost at 30,000 right now. It's like as we're in limbo with Trump and Biden trying to figure out that whole thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. The other thing that's going to be cool is that as people become adapters to Unify Impact, that their your sentiment, how you feel when you're looking at a company's performance and you're looking at the different things that they do in their supply chain or what have you, you can determine how you'd like to score that company. And actually, that information would easily get back to the company themselves to say, there's a lot of people that are willing to divest from you because of X, Y, and Z.
Mm.
So
Again, that's I
I just
like
love
that.
the idea of giving power.
Yeah, the power to the people. Yep,
Yeah.
it's
Power to
cool.
people to align their values. It's not just power like power, but aligning in what you truly believe in. So this world can change.
Yeah, if that, especially if that's a top value for you, this gives it a tool for that. It's really neat. And then it also helps you sleep better at night because you're investing in companies that are aligned with you. And the more aligned you are, I mean, I talk about this on this podcast all the time. The more
Oh, you
you
do?
are
Yeah.
aligned with your values and in the universe, the more like flow happens, the more good things happen to you. And
Can I take that as one of our storylines? That's fantastic. I love it.
absolutely. I mean, it's the truth.
It is so
Uh,
true. But also, I think with the power you have, companies will change, and if they change for the better, and they're trying. There's no horrible person in a company. I mean, policies could be pretty bad, and maybe some of the leaders. But at the end of the day, they're publicly traded companies trying to do what they can do, right? They have to stay in business.
yeah.
So I think the more they are aware of consumer sentiment, and it becomes bigger and bigger, you're going to start seeing these companies changing policies and changing how they're acting, or else they're going to lose shareholders. And so, it's really exciting. It's really going to be powerful.
Yeah. It reminds me of the story. I read the Nike book.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And last year, and
Mm-hmm.
it reminds me of that story of it wasn't like he was purposely creating these factories and underpaying people overseas. The CEO, he was just ignorant of it, right? Because he had so much going on for the
Uh-huh.
most part. And
Yep.
once he figured out and realized how much the public cared,
Yep.
he completely changed. The CEO, they completely changed everything: higher pay, better conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't the company that decided that; it was the people caring about what the company was doing, Nike, that made that decision happen.
You have just given a perfect example of what we'd like to do with every company.
Yeah, that's great. The more of that, the better. I love it. Let's end on that. I want to ask you one final question because I didn't ask you the question I ask everybody in the beginning. I want to ask you the one that I always ask at the end. Do you know this one?
I don't know the end one. Nope.
um, Marianne, if you can go back and give your 18-year-old self any sort of advice, and it could be completely different than what we talked about this whole time, and that you would listen to, what, based on maybe what you were going through at the time or whatever, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
I guess I would say be grounded. I like the 18-year-old self's brain and the 32-year-old self brain and the 110-year-old brain that I am now, for the simple reason that I have always loved. I hate to use the word visionary. It's just dumb because I'm not that smart. I'm not a visionary, but I always want to see the what if. And I get very excited about things when I can see an outcome or a potential outcome for something. And I did that when I was first working in advertising, and it just stayed with me forever. So I guess, but I think if I had to tell myself at 18, just take a chill pill. Seriously. I think
Take
I
a
have to tell myself that every day, but or
take
at
a
least learn to meditate.
Hey, maybe after this phone call, it can inspire. You can go right on Insight Timer and you can download all my meditations.
I will do that, I promise you. You have to name this one interview the unmindful interview.
No, this is extremely because this is like a category that, I think every category's been touched on and people have maybe not, but like nobody talks about this. And I think that's so cool. One of the other things that a lot of mindful people or podcasts or spiritual never talk about is money. Like it's okay to want to make a lot of money. It's
Yeah.
okay to have a lot of money. It's okay to, whatever a lot means to, you or the individual. It's okay to want to invest in companies and make profits from that company, because when you make more money you can have more impact. When you make more money you can have more options with your life and do and it, there's it's in
So
a
all
lot of
I'm
people.
saying is, so just keep in mind, again, no such thing as a green company or no such thing as a social company.
Mm,
It's just companies
mm,
with a lot of different ways they operate, including how they're doing in the market. So just rest assured that you're going to make money. Because it's not like I'm pushed. Well, I can't give you advice, so zip it up. But it's not like one would be saying, one
yeah,
would be saying, "Oh, you can only be in these companies if you want to do good for the world." Because you can do good for the world by telling those companies a thing or two, and look for what they're doing that's good.
yeah,
And because this raw data is getting, it's granular and it's available to
it's
you now.
available now.
That is, I just think that's so fantastic.
Yeah, and people don't know that it's available, right? So and it can, and use this app, that's where it's available for sure, make it easy.
Hmm.
One of the companies I love buying from now that we're talking about this is Attitude Living. It's called attitudeliving.com.
Hmm.
They like their deodorants are cardboard, um,
Yep.
so like that. And then they're it's EWG certified. So I look at that. I have no idea if they're public. I should actually look at that because I would love to invest in a
Yeah.
company like that.
Well, eventually we'll do some private equity stuff too, but yeah, that'd be really interesting to know.
Yeah,
Or to know the companies that are making deodorants, like the larger companies like P&G. What are they doing? Because a lot of companies are coming out with sort of um, organic brands, if you think about it, right? But they're
yeah,
also selling non-organic things at the same time. So
right, right, right. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I want to say thank you so much for being on here, Marianne.
it was
Uh,
so much fun.
I learned a lot. I think that people listening are definitely going to learn a lot. And this will be out. Let me press stop here.